It's worldwide.
Yeah, this is going to be good.
Next question.
Yeah. Next question. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I am your griot telling you stories, and I have with me world famous. How do you, Dave? Ed.
You know, a regular guy, poet, community activist, electrician, general contractor.
But you were a druid too, right?
That's covered by poet.
Okay, that's right. So why don't you explain to us how druid and poet are covered?
Well, they're just there are different languages in the world, and like for example, a poet in Mandarin isn't poet; it's some other word, and in Celtic languages, there's a lot of words for poet, and poets can do a lot more things than you usually associate them with, and there are, like, for example, the Inuit have a shitload of words for snow because they have a lot of snow,
right?
And some societies have a lot of words for poets because they have a lot of poets.
So in the Druid tradition, that isn't just Ireland, correct? It's other places.
Yeah. It's we used to be a contender,
right?
We were all over the place, and I just happened to come from a family that was at the most extreme, well, pretty much the most extreme western part of where Celts were. So, where Paris is now, they used to have Druids too. I mean, I'm sure they still do, but they may have different words for them now too, because you may remember they were invaded by the Romans and they had to change their whole language.
So would you say that the Druid and the shaman are similar?
Certain kinds of Druids are more shamanistic than others. For example, there are, what's the best way to put it to you? The Romans made Druids illegal. So places that had Druids had to come up with other names. Like in Britain, the bard is a very noble term. The noble bard, they call Shakespeare
right.
Bard. A bard was a really lowly title for poets. More of the entertainer type. And they're Feely, they're Fates, there are other poets that don't tell stories. Like, for example, you probably don't recall me sitting around telling stories.
No.
That much.
No.
Mostly, I'm an organizational guy. I figure out stuff that's more technical. So I'm like a technical poet.
Yes. So
I still do, but let me just finish that.
Right.
I still do poet stuff. Like, one of the things that we're supposed to do is to, if you want to get people to do great things, but it's a little dangerous. So if you can explain it to them in such a way that they really look great, or in their own mind, they're more likely to do it. So that's a place that poeting skills come in. It's and this is why the Romans had so much problem with Druids, because they have a tendency to make people feel good about, potentially going and getting themselves killed for a good cause.
Right. And
I might add also for some bad causes. I mean, it goes with the
goes with the territory. Yes. So, and good and bad. So I have themes on this show, and one is good and bad, and whether they are relevant.
Well, yeah, I think that they are good and bad is relevant. But this makes me think of something that comes to bear on this differences of poets culturally, because I ran into Allen Ginsberg at one of the Living Theater Seders, and we had a discussion about poets, and he told me that he thought the function of poets was to embellish the void. That's that kind of, I guess, Buddhism thing.
Well, it also goes to what you were talking about, getting people to feel good about dying, and the cheerleading of culture, of who you are. That's also a void, especially with the endemic characteristic of the Roman motif of the mercantile business world, pasting over everyone's culture.
Yeah. Because actually the way that exchange went is he asked me first what I thought the function of poets was. And I said, the function of poets is the maintenance of culture. And, then I put it back to him, and that's what he said. Because I think that as an organizational kind of poet, that, I put a little bit of thought into figuring out how to make things happen in advance of their happening that are good. And then that's where it goes back to what I was saying. You get other people to understand that potential good scenario. And if you explain it well enough, then you might have help in getting it to come to fruition, like the homesteading that we did. That was a lot about creating a scenario that was believable enough for people to do things that many of their neighbors said were impossible.
Or criminal.
Right. And you had to have a way of explaining it that it was all going to turn out okay.
So before we get into homesteading and how we met, one last thing on poetry. My feeling of poetry, because I'm a wordsmith, in the last, since I left New York City in '88 and became the itinerant scholar in different universities, and not the, matriculating guy who teaches by the book. But poetry is this entity of your heart. It is the thing that can be heard with your ears, but goes to your heart. And a good deal of the Romanesque poet is a merchant. And in a lot of ways, the modern poet is a prostitute. What do you think of that?
Well, if I wanted a prostitute, I wouldn't go to a poet.
Go to a professional.
You really, you got to leave these. There are niches that are occupied by professionals.
Right. And David and I.
But you're saying that they're in some sense. I mean, because this is a time where we are not really using prostitute as a negative thing anymore. This is America.
Right.
A lot of things have changed, and that's a valid profession.
Right.
Not to be
besmirched.
I think you're supposed to use lawyer instead.
Yes, I think you're right. And from now on, I will discuss it in that way, and have the precursor of that. The term prostitute is no longer a negative term, and I don't think it was. I don't think that the word prostitute ever was. It was just taken over by lawyers to mean something.
And we also grew up in a country. The United States is very
uptight about sex.
Yeah, I've been influenced by that, so I'm aware of that. But it's the founding fathers, I think, were very Christianized. They really had an odd take on religion, and also, our founders were in large part early on kind of Puritanesque, and we still have that as a legacy.
Now, would you say that, because you look at the corporate world, especially in the 19th century, it was very WASP, and people like Rockefeller and all of that, his ilk, J.P. Morgan, saw that God gave them the right to be as dark as they wanted to be. That was the WASP, Christian, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant way of doing things.
I don't know. Are the Rockefellers Christian?
They say they are. They're WASPs. I don't know if being white Anglo-Saxon Protestant is Christian. I don't know. But I mean, the guys who had the manifest destiny, let's steal. I mean, they killed basically 600 million indigenous people for their manifest destiny.
Thank God the Americans are keeping anybody else from doing that.
Yes. We're the only ones who can do that. And maybe the English, they let, and maybe, but it's that root race of the Roman mercantile, because the English are the Roman mercantiles, and so are we.
Huh. Yeah, that's what sort of fueled their empire. But most of those Mediterranean people, it was pretty much the same thing. Even the Greeks.
Even the Greeks. They just pretended to be, that's why they wore sheaths. They were just pretending,
Yeah, I forget where I was hearing it, but I was just hearing about, the Athenians taking over, they set up a whole, NATO thing, and I'm a big fan of NATO. They set up a NATO thing against the Persians, and everyone had they didn't have to join it, but if you got mutual protection if you joined it. And they collected taxes. They collected tithes from all the city-states to run this protection thing because they had done so well militarily. And that's where they collected this money. And that's where a little podunk place like Athens got the money from shaking down their neighbors. That's where they got the money to build the Acropolis and all those other wonderful things that we associate with the city on the hill.
Yes, the penis envy. Yes, exactly.
They're the guys that really set up this new form of collective defense that went on to become the Roman Empire.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, yes, hand in hand. And you can go back to Babylon with the same motif.
Al, I'd like to point out that the United States just got over going back to Babylon.
Aren't we still there? I thought we were still there. Looking around for the sacred artifacts.
I know. I think that was Syria where we just killed people. Yeah. But really, that must have been very shocking to historians, or even just the people there. I mean, I don't know how many are from the original, incubus of Babylonian. Yeah, because they've gotten washed over by a bunch of
lots of people. That whole neck of the woods has been washed over so much; it's unbelievable. But
I did really see it much almost like parricide in the sense of we're talking what's it?
20,000 years?
5,000?
No, 20.
No, I think it's like 5,000.
To Babylon? To Babylon?
Let's see. The pyramids at 5,000 years. So,
right. So you add another 1,500 to 2,000.
Yeah, something like that. Right. And and then it's the children coming home.
Right.
After all this time, people who are like, "Oh yeah, Hammurabi, great guy, read his book," blah blah blah, and we go where all of this stuff is from, and we go and blow up the place.
Yeah, we go to blow right, but we steal a lot. I mean, when we went into Iraq in '91. We went straight out to the desert where the French and the Germans were digging up super duper artifacts. And then we hit the museum to get all the books on what those things were.
Thank God we had the transport facilities there to get that shit out of there.
Yeah, get that shit out of there.
Into the hands of collectors.
Right, exactly. More money, more money.
Yes. Again, that's not like a new thing.
No.
You want to see the friezes from the Acropolis, you got to go to Britain.
You got to go to, London. Those museums. I spent a lot of time there. So let's slowly turn into the time zone of when did you graduate high school? Let's say that.
I graduated high school in 75.
75. Okay.
Mhm.
And so at what point did you turn from your New Jersey existence to going to New York City?
Well, that was like 78, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I wound up in Hoboken as a kind of stop station.
Intermediate.
I had friends that went to Stevens.
Right.
And I must say that it's a good thing for poets to hang out with engineering people for a period of their life. It really does show that some people can study texts that appear to be full of meaningless symbols
Yes.
and work really hard on it.
Right. And it's another form of religion.
Yeah. But then my sister had gone to the new school after college, and I
Followed her?
I got the bug, and I went to the new school.
Right.
And I really, that's like the first place that I really felt I was learning.
Something. What did you study there?
A lot of stuff. The interesting thing was that you didn't have to have a major.
Right.
And so you could take whatever you pleased.
What year was that?
That was 78, 9.
Right. Because I was there in 74 and 5 studying Lisette Model and Cartier-Bresson in their photography department.
That was the beautiful thing about the place, is that it was really full of some really
amazing people. Yes, amazing people.
And it had a really kind of a not-for-profit vibe, more about the education than...
kind of like Cooper Union was.
They were really of a similar ilk.
Right. Cooper Union was amazing. I went there. You had to be 20 to go there. They wanted like serious people. And my mentor, my electrical mentor, got me. He just walked me in and said, he's going to school here. And I was 16. And, we tuned transformers. And I went to this class. And everyone's wearing, looked like engineers. They were wearing the robes, the black pants, white shirt, black tie, slide rule on their hip. And they were doing field equations. And they were taking it out to like the 32nd decimal. And I was just looking at it. And this guy who had been an electrical engineer for like 40 years, he was about 50-something years old. And I was 16. He didn't even notice me. And any questions? And I raised my hand. He goes, what? And I didn't even wait. I just went up there and erased the whole half of the equation he did, and then showed how all you really needed to do was take this variable, multiply it by that and this, and you get the answer that you need, which is the first 3 numbers, then the dot, and then 3 more numbers. That's all you need to tune a transformer. You don't have to put a 36. You don't need an equation to take up a whole blackboard. He goes, but that's not in the book. I said, but that's why they call it a field equation. You do it in a field. And he threw me out. I lasted all of, maybe 15, 20 minutes in electrical engineering school. And then I went back to the head guy. And he said, yes, I thought you'd get thrown out because you're smarter than that guy. So we have this new thing called alternative technology. Did you ever run into any of those folks in that department?
No, not really. I kind of avoided shop class in high school.
Right, exactly.
I associated the two.
Yep,
at the time.
Yep, that was basically it. But we had, pretty fun things to play with. And 10th Street, that going from the east side up to West Village, what was the street that all the clubs and things? I always, it comes from 6th Avenue and goes all the way over to Lower East Side, kind of diagonally. Bleecker. I don't know why I can't remember the name of that. I worked on the Electric Ladyland that's right there or near it.
Well, that terminates at ABC, or not ABC,
Yeah, CBGBs.
CBGBs.
Yep, runs right into CBGBs. And so there you went to the new school, and then what that was 70 or 80?
Yeah.
That was no.
I guess it was around. I must have still been in there because I'm trying to think, and I had this great idea to become a policeman with one of my best friends.
But that's in your lineage, right?
Well, I had cousins in there, and I guess I should piece it together a little bit. One thing, since we're on this, when I was in high school, I looked out at cow fields, and I was just commenting to my wife, who went to the same high school as me, that about that when I was at the new school, I had this weird experience of being in a class where I looked out the window and there was a giant iguana, like right outside the window. It was like 40 feet long or something like that.
He was just hanging out in the sun?
It was on a rooftop on top of the Texas place. Trying to think what the name was, on the corner of, I guess, 13th Street.
Oh, you're talking about New York City, and you're talking about
yeah. It had an iguana.
Yeah. I remember that. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So when I was there, I met some really smart people, and I got invited into an off-campus scene in a seminar. There were a lot of seminars at that time.
Yep.
And it was like a real teaching, preferred teaching method.
Yes.
And anyway, I met a psychoanalyst, and I got the bug to become a psychoanalyst. But at the same time, I realized that I needed to do something that was going to give my life a distinctive flair. And I thought, what, I could become a cop. Let's do it for like maybe 2 years. And, then for the rest of my life, I could always have it at my CV.
Right.
I had been counseled by people that, that was so important to have your curriculum vitae completely, well balanced and all.
Right.
I never really got that, but I thought it'll be great to say that I've done that.
Right.
And I convinced my buddy to do it with me. And I think the deal was we were going to do it for 2 at the least, 3 at the most. And they loved the idea of my being in a seminar and the path to being an analyst. And they said they'd keep doing it and they would pay for it.
Who, the police? The police department?
Yeah. I met with guys in psychological service.
Yep. What happened to you?
Well,
there you are.
I got into the first class.
Right.
Been at a class in a while, and my buddy didn't. And it was so weird because I got a 99 on it. It wasn't a really complicated test. I got a 99 on it. He got a 98. But with all the veterans getting their extra points, I got into the first class, and he didn't. And, when I started doing exercises with these guys, and, the first time I went to the academy, everybody was a veteran except for me.
Veteran meaning from the military.
Yeah. Not only that they were like Suffolk County policemen already.
Right.
People from the Parks Service. It was just an older crowd, and it was an extremely conservative crowd. And I just, realized that the plan didn't make much sense anymore with just me. I really had this scenario of
you and your buddy.
Yeah, because he was a bigger guy than me, and we'd had a good track record of my not having too many problems if he was around.
Right.
Because I could say things that would make people
upset. Yes.
So I didn't go forward with it, and he got into the second class, and he did go forward with it, and he was the last police commissioner of the city of New York.
Right. So that was his path, and that wasn't yours.
Yeah, and the whole thing of 2 at the least, 3 at the most went to the wayside because he found a great niche. He was a great commissioner.
Right. So, what would you say after that was your niche? Where did you niche into? Did you keep up with the psychology?
Yeah, for a while, but then it took a bad turn because we used to meet up at the Women's National Republican Club up at Rockefeller Center,
Yeah.
and it was very how would you say, like, secular at that time. The guy's name was Stuart Schneiderman.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great guy, and he got invited to move the seminar up to where did we go? We went to the Maison Francais
Right.
up at Columbia.
Columbia. Yep.
And then Columbia offered a way to nestle his seminar and training onto the Columbia campus. But their pound of flesh on taking him on
Right.
was that it would be a program oriented towards medical doctors, and and training analysts that were already in the pipeline for medical school
Right.
and getting a license as a medical doctor. And that just added so much to the process of being an analyst.
Right.
I was inspired by this guy, Jacques Lacan,
Right.
who Stuart studied with. And his thing was that poets and analysts should train together because they studied the same material. They just used it differently. And
How so? Explain that. Explain that. How do poetries and analysts do the same thing, but in a different way?
They study the same material. They just use it differently.
You mean human
like I was
experience, pathos?
Yeah, it's a way of interpreting people's motivations and and even the social structure of people's minds. And it's one thing when an analyst uses it to make deep insights into a person's personal illusion, and it's a different thing when that profiling is taken to society as a whole, which is what poets are supposed to do. Not just society as a whole, but
Humanity.
Existence
Right.
as a whole.
And that's, when I was on my path as the itinerant scholar, I got in a program where I ended up studying a certain thing. And my boss, because when I went to these institutions, these universities and other things, I was employed. They paid me to go to school, which was quite nice. And
Yeah, that's a nice thing.
that's a nice thing. I always was an electrician because I found being an electrician was the greatest cover. I was sent to go look at things forensically, psychologically, forensically, and I would go into environments and situations, and instead of going in as a shrink, I went in as an electrician, and I got a lot more information out of people.
Yeah,
And I fixed their life. I fixed their light switch. But
that reminds me when my light switches, just to broach it over
Mhm.
to
Electricity.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. When I did acid one time, I lost my whole sense of self, and I managed to pull it together by sitting under a light switch and just flicking it on and off, and watching the lights go on, the lights go off.
Man.
Gave me a sense of I have a certain amount of control over this.
Yes, I can do
And,
this.
and that's who you're talking to today, because I worked my way back from that.
Yep. And David is one of my proteges.
Yes, indeed.
Why don't you give him that story? Like how we met and how we tiptoed you into the brotherhood and sisterhood of electrical magicians.
I had a really nutty landlord, and
The unmentionable one.
yeah. Now there's a good Druidic thing there, because his name was removed, and that was hard to do, but it worked, and he became the unmentionable one for pretty much the rest of his life. I mean, not all the people around him, but a lot of people referred to him as the unmentionable one. But the long and the short of it is that he cut the power to a loft I was living in, and it became necessary to just get a couple of solar panels on the roof, just to have a little bit of lighting, pretty much for the most part, lighting, doorbell, and I was really unhappy with lead acid batteries, so I was looking for some resource because I thought that there was a better thing out there, and I just didn't know about it. And that's when I ran into the something for advanced and unconventional.
The Institute for Aesthetically and Appropriate Technology.
Now, I mean, if you have a question about batteries,
right, and that's it.
That's going to attract you.
Yep.
So that's how I contacted you.
Yep.
And said, I want a better battery. I want something different. And you didn't have it, but I took a note that you were there.
Right.
And then I guess maybe a year later, when my neighbors and I had occupied some abandoned buildings, and the electricity thing wasn't going so well with taking it from the lamppost. And, not only taking it from the lamppost, but we did, I believe, find one wire going into a big building.
Right.
And my friend Sam and I managed to hook that one wire up to something hot in the street, down under the street. And then we drove a ground stake into the ground to get our neutral. You need two wires.
Right.
You
need the flow of current.
Yeah, and it's supposed to go back to the power plant, and we drove a stick into the ground made out of copper, and the ground, turned the corner, follow the sidewalk, made it back to the power plant. Not a good connection, I would say. But indeed, the power plant was sitting on the same ground that we had driven a spike into the ground, and I'm sure they had plenty of spikes into the ground themselves.
Yes, they did. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So that kind of worked out, but it really wasn't a long-term solution, and
Tell them
when I reached out
it used to melt the sidewalk.
Well, we certainly melted the wires.
Yep.
But that's where I
came
reached
in.
out to you.
Yeah.
And I had a big apartment, almost like a loft, and I said, I'll share this with you.
So
you'll have this, and if you just set us up with, what's his name, Joe, was the guy.
Right, on the license. Yep.
Yeah,
and we put in I used to work for him, and he was a guy whose father had a license, and he grew up like I grew up being an electrician, but my father didn't have a license. I had a mentor, Mike Stoll, and Joe had a very laissez-faire thing about everything. It was all about money, girls, lots of coffee, and good times. And I was very responsible. So I was he had a union crew that didn't like him too much, but they would do certain things. So we put in the meter bases and we ran the risers and we wired the whole place. And in that, we taught a lot of people to be electricians, and David was one of them. And he took it further because he started working for me on other projects, and he went from there.
And I know he.
Yep. And we had a lot of other people. I think you and Deb were the two who picked it up, at least in the housing, the OR, Outstanding Renewal Enterprises.
But it was surprising, though, that the Lower East Side produced a large number of field electricians.
Yes, that's.
And then there, I still work with one or two.
Right. And they came out. Did they come out of our? Because we used to have classes at Lucky 13.
Yeah, they came out of the same necessity of having to hook up a building with no one wanting to do it.
Right.
So you sort of had to get it going, and then come up with, you needed to have somewhat habitable space in order for people to agree to pay a maintenance fee. And those maintenance fees, which went to no one in particular, but to the
building
entity,
right?
And that allowed you to build up money enough to get the attention of a licensed electrician,
right.
who, until you had a couple of $1,000s to just sweeten their pot
and pay for the materials.
Yeah, it just made it realistic.
Right.
So in order to, you needed to break the law.
Because
in order to
basically,
get
right,
going.
Because these buildings were basically not owned by anyone but the state, and by the way code runs, you can't put metered current or gas into a building like that unless somebody owns it. And it's like one of those catch-22 things, but I did it enough to get around that. And
the way I recall it is that they needed to see a lease.
Right.
So you went and you bought a lease.
Right.
You showed them a lease.
Right. And then once you got that,
and
then the marshal couldn't throw you out because the platinum card of residency is your electric bill.
It's it's a good indicator.
Yep, it's a good indicator. So when David took me into this, it was a floor of a building. Well, it had been 2 apartments, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so when he brought me up there, the staircase was about to fall off the building. And when we got up there, everything was crisp. I mean, just charcoal, everything.
Well, just that floor, really.
Right. Well, that's where the fire was. Yeah. So the floor that we were going to live in was the most crisp place, the place I had to, and most people would go in there and go, my God, I'm never moving in here. What did we do? We kicked out the back windows and through all of that, we just shoveled the shit out the window into the lot behind us. And
I might add, maybe not the most clear, thought out way of dealing with it, but it worked out.
Oh, well, we couldn't get a dumpster. It would show people what we were doing, but we threw it out there. And basically, I just brought in steel studs and like 1/4-inch sheetrock, and within less than a week, it looked like a loft. And I put a hung ceiling from another job, so it looked like a really nice place. And put up some track light and bingo bango.
And this goes to the whole the people you want to have doing things organizationally. And because while we were very influential in making things run, we were also the people who chose to take the most disastrous scenarios, because most of the other apartments were not that bad.
Not in that, or any of the buildings we had.
There was always one.
Yes, one that had the fire that burned out the roof, that made it, financially and legally inappropriate for people to live in.
Yeah, and that's where you want to put the people who
need to live,
who are going to work. And
right.
The only way that people are really going to work is
they're homeless.
Really is you got to be those people.
Right, yes, you got to be those people. And it's interesting when I talk about this. Who's the young lady who's a movie star who came from our collective?
Rosario Dawson.
Right. Every time she goes on one of those talk shows to, hawk her movie, she always talks about that more than anything. And it's quite interesting how the host he's got his little earwig and they're saying, hey, don't let her talk about that. It's like, people think it's, terrible to live that way. Someone was saying to me well, you lived with all these poor people. You were, that's where those people needed the help. That's where you could do the most good.
Yeah. Nobody else is going to do is going to be desperate enough to do those kind of things.
And you and I came from a, upper middle class motif where we didn't have to, you could have gone on to be a shrink and done all that crap and had your house in Westchester, and myself also, but we didn't, because we were driven more by, our humanity.
Yeah. That's, I came to believe that that's what I went to school for.
Yeah. And it was so much fun. Tell them about so the first thing we did, we cleaned all that crap out. We put the walls up, put the track lights up. We got a couple of 55-gallon empty drums, made a fireplace out of one, and used the others to make our kitchen. And I had some nice marble. So we put a door down and covered it in marble tile. And the first thing we did was have a great potluck dinner that we then did for how many years did we do that?
Yeah, in retrospect, I always describe that situation as running salons.
Right, it was a salon. Yes, it was a salon.
Really, that's a technical term. Yeah. We had some of our bedrock people who would always show up. Sometimes not so positive thing.
Right.
But then we'd sit and figure out who or what class of people we wanted to have, and invite some artists, mix them up with lawyers,
right.
Get some contractors, but mix them up with people who might be the clients, and mix it up.
And David and I had a kismet of personality. We were so similar, but as opposite as you could get. So it was quite interesting. And our different groups, I'm probably maybe 8 years older than he is. And so I was in the Soho scene, and I was in the Lower East Side scene in the 60s. So I had that access to people. And he and I also had the access because the Lower East Side, when we were there, when we first went in there, was still a very dangerous place, but it was coming back as a cultural place, and a place where people could have the space to do something, like Sandra with the shuttle and all the different art things we did in abandoned buildings.
Yeah.
So what's your remembrance of the energy of that time?
Pretty anarchistic, I guess.
But also very, people had the motivation to have endeavor. Like Lynn and the Miracle Grill is a good example.
Yeah. Well, I think when 13th Street was going, she was still over at Great Jones.
Right.
Great Jones.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm not sure. Were you there for the Living Theater part of it?
Yeah, in the 70s, yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I mean in our building.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seemed as though it would be. We already had the Living Theater, the whole Ginsberg kind of older bohemian scene.
Right, the beat scene, the
beatnik kind of
the
thing.
Beat scene.
And the Living Theater was back from Europe, and it just seemed like a great idea to get like some established cultural institution involved in doing our project. Because in retrospect, I realized it was 52 apartments, Al.
Yes.
So it was a lot of buildings, but that first little building was the important one, I thought.
Yes, it was. It was the heart of what we did.
Yeah, and it had space that we were going to allocate to common area.
Right, which not every building had that.
Yeah, and a theater would lend itself to being a multi-purpose meeting space.
And we kept that too. We had the Alchemical Theater in there, and it was also the commons. It was the common space.
Yeah, and that's a really important aspect to doing a building or building after building, because you need to have a place that you set up, that you control, and that it's a comfortable place for people to come and meet.
It's a base of operation.
And it's also like a model, You know,
Right.
like when they have communities that they're trying to sell buildings in that they haven't even built.
Right.
We were like that, and those places, real estate wise, they have a model that people can come into and see what it's like, and say, oh, I like the way this is done. I want to live here, and that's what we used those common spaces.
And our space, our salon, our what floor was that? Third or fourth floor?
Fourth.
Our fourth floor was that also. Our place was more a common space. I mean, you had your little box, I had my little box, but three-quarters of it was, almost community space. Yes, we had total control over it, but we really didn't have a lock on that door.
No, that's true. But I think Rolando coined the term for those rooms as the micro dorm.
Then we had the micro dorm where Jerry lived.
Yeah, the micro dorm.
Yes.
That was a good thing. And there's a lot of other little things to throw in here that I'm forgetting. Is that at the time that I was doing the police action, I belonged to the Yippies. And we had a club only like 5 doors away on Bleecker Street from CBGB's. And that's what caused the little problems. I got kicked out of the Yippies because I was upfront about going to become a policeman. I guess it didn't make much sense to them.
Right.
I thought it made a lot of sense.
No, yeah, right. And that's
it seemed like a no-brainer to me that it was a great idea.
Yes.
But they weren't very visionary.
Well, you know what it is? It goes back to what's going on today. People get in their silos and they can't look past it.
Yeah.
That's, we're having the same difficulty, and people don't realize that is, it's the pyramid scam. That little few people at the top of the pyramid cause the division between you and, people that you and the Yippies, you were a Yippie. They should have been able to embrace you for being you and realize, like you said, it's a no-brainer to have you as a policeman,
I thought it was a great idea. Honestly,
it was.
I really thought it was a great idea.
I mean, wherever I go to a new place, all those years, 30-something years of being an itinerant scholar, and I was there on a project, the first place I would go to is the police department, become their buddy. Say, I'm doing this over here. If you get any static, come talk to me, and I'll give you the 411. And they love that.
Man.
And then
that reminds me of 13th Street, because we weren't really sure that was the building that we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it, half the block being abandoned, it made more sense there because there was going to be room to grow. But when we went around to look at buildings, part of the regalia was hard hats and clipboards.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They hadn't really developed the whole fluorescent
jacket yet.
Vest thing yet.
Right.
But and if there was any opportunity, in fact, we went out of our way to find an opportunity to engage with a police car or something, just to say that, we're going to be in X address.
Right.
And just wanted you guys to know in case you get any complaints.
Right.
And they were so thankful.
Right, exactly. Police
and
really love that.
short-circuited the whole complaint response.
Yep, exactly. That's what I'm
we
talking
know, we know what's going on there, no problem. And no response.
Yeah, right.
And that allowed us to
have freedom.
Have access to a lot of places, not because we were trying to hide, but because we were hiding in plain sight.
Right.
Saying, officers, just excuse me, we're going to be blah, 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 give them the address, have some paperwork.
Right.
And clipboards.
Do you know the word ethnography? Ethnography. I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but it's a Latin word that means hiding in plain sight.
Why didn't they just say hiding in fucking plain sight?
Because they're Greeks.
Oh.
So whenever
sorry to swear there.
Right. Whenever you see anything with X, like the X15 or anything that has an X in front of it, you should look closer because they're hiding something in plain sight.
X-Lax?
Mm-hmm. You got it, kid. You got it. So,
Lex, is that?
yeah, they're hiding something in plain sight. You should be eating more roughage, not taking these stupid pills.
Ah, now I understand.
Yes. So, the other interesting thing was when we got the blowback from the powers that be from doing the housing authority that we were running. And the police came in and they broke the law. They didn't care. They just kind of beat us up.
Yeah, well, it was a protracted thing.
Yes, it was. It was. I was in Ireland when David, the Irish guy, the guy who was in Wisdom of the King, was arrested.
David Cockney.
Yeah, the Cockney, right? Okay, Cockney. But yeah, he wouldn't like me say he was Irish. But but I was in, Ireland, in a little town in Skibbereen, and it was like right there on the front page, and I couldn't believe it. It's unbelievable.
Is that when you punched the commander?
No, no. That's when I was. I almost got married and stayed in Ireland. I would have never met you, or I did meet you, but I mean, I wouldn't have come back, and you wouldn't have. We wouldn't have gone to Ireland together. That was before.
I just did a Google Maps and went followed Goulet and did the aerial, and I did find Mad Mick and Megs O'Driscoll's rooftop.
Oh,
yeah, I did. It's it's right there. Only because I was told that right after the bridge you should stop, and it's up the hill, and you'll find a little place on the right, and I found the bridge.
So were you?
River.
Were you? Somebody I tell stories about Ireland, and I have one when I went to Ireland the second time in 1969, and I was sent to study at Trinity, and I met an old crone, and she took me to her farm, and that's a whole nother story. But people always want to know where it is, and it was like a magical place, meaning even Google can't find it, right? And
well, maybe Mick. I know he redid the roof. It's not slate anymore, so maybe some of the magic went with the slate.
Yes, exactly.
Because you can see it.
Right. So anyway, the interesting. When did we go to Ireland? What year was that? 80 something, right?
Yeah, maybe 86.
Right, 86. Yeah. And so we were at, it was you, me, Joni Freedom, and Pat, and Sarah, and that was an amazing crew.
Yeah.
Yep, that was a great crew.
I think they had a lot of fun. Those girls went on to do great things in the O'Driscoll girls.
Yes, I know.
They really. I look forward to going back to Cork and looking up. I can't remember Molly's sister's name right offhand, but.
What do they become? A doctor and a lawyer? Or what do they become?
No, the younger girl teaches archaeology at the university in Cork.
Mm-hmm.
And Molly, she went on to become a camera person doing journalism, I guess TV.
Oh yeah, like a video or film.
Yeah, but news oriented,
Right.
to the extent that she got hurt in the Troubles up in Northern Ireland where she was working, and a significant hurt.
Right.
But
so we knew those two girls when they were wee ones. Like the younger one she was just a little nibbling. I mean, she was just always so cute. And their brother, what was his name?
Shocking red hair.
Yeah, shocking red hair. He was the youngest, and he was just a little devil. he was amazing.
Yeah, I got to imagine he's got a name like Owen or something.
Yes.
I have to go over my notes on these things.
When's the last time you talked to them?
I was, let's see, I was in their house, and Molly was there, I guess, maybe I went with Michelle, so it must have been 93,
Right.
something like that. And they put a bathroom in.
Right. They used to have a bucket.
Yeah, and that's when I met Molly and her boyfriend Ivan. I'm still working off a list of movies that they gave us to watch
Huh.
because they were
Movie
very knowledgeable in that department.
Right.
It's from Molly O'Driscoll that I discovered The Big Lebowski.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. People say, I'd be known as the dude.
Well, Al, you did have a certain
Ambiance.
similarity to that.
Yes.
that
Yes.
character.
I always wore my pajamas, so it, kind of.
Yeah.
I still do.
That was a wonderful thing, bringing that case of cheap sunglasses. To
Oh,
my
yes.
market.
Oh, yes. You always got go to that's the anthropologist scam. You bring truly amazing things that they never saw that cost a dime where you come from. Like when I did an ethnography in Australia, Aboriginal tribe, Polaroid gave me a big Polaroid camera to do these large, format Polaroids, and they gave the SX70 was just coming out, so they gave me a case of those, like 20 of them, and another couple of cases of the film that just went in there. So when I went to the tribe, and so my boss, who was in Adelaide, he said, "Oh, these people they're like children. They won't let you take pictures. They won't let you do an ethnography. Blah blah blah." And when I got there, they were like waiting for me. They knew I was going to show up. I wasn't announced, but they were like literally waiting, drunk out of their minds.
Carved on the stones.
Yes,
1,000
exactly.
years earlier.
1,000 years earlier. Anyway, got there, and they were very, brought us to where they were hanging, and we were doing great. And I had these big cases, and they said, "What are in those?" And I took them out, took a SX70 out, and it came in a really great box. Polaroid is really good. It's like they were like before, Apple. These guys were. So it had this box and a like silk bag that the camera, and it's flat, and it would pop apart, and it was an amazing camera. And so I, said, here, then I showed them how to open the box, how to take it out of the bag, how to pop it open without ripping it apart, and how to open the little door and slip the canister of film, and it shot out a little cardboard thing that covered the film. And then I showed them how to take a couple of pictures, and then I gave everyone in the tribe a camera and about 3 packs of film.
Al, we really could have set up a much better cargo cult than the one that they set up.
Yeah, oh boy, could we ever. Yes, we were psychically connected to
a well-intentioned
Yes.
cargo cult.
Yes, ethically enterprised. But see, the problem with all of this, none of this mishy-gosh of a world that we have is ethically enterprised.
People make mistakes.
Right. And that's my teacher would always say, don't worry about it. All things are as they should be. It's
going to work out.
Mhm.
But that I've come to realize, and I think I realized this a long time ago. It's a lot of that perspective is very easy when you come from the upper middle class, and you can just get away with a lot,
but not forever. Not forever.
No, not forever, but that's why I always took the shittiest places and stuff like that, because I had the impression that I had a privilege.
Right.
I was lucky. In addition to having a privilege, I was just
Right.
a relatively lucky person.
We were both lucky. I mean, that's why lucky 13, right?
Yeah.
And so our other great, David
Is
and
this
I,
going the way that you imagined? Are we on the right track here?
yeah, we're doing fine. We're doing fine. You got enough? You got time? A little more time? Yeah.
I'm all in favor of wrapping it up.
Okay,
And,
we can do that because
and if you have a good sense of how this came out, then we could do it again.
okay,
And maybe fine tune it, because I do find us, and those of you that are listening, I hope this isn't too boring.
Right.
I find that we're not very organized in this. This is like we're really just rambling.
Yes.
Which could be good.
Right.
But why don't you check and
Yes.
see
Right.
if that's good?
Well, I've been doing this for 3.5 years, and I have about 2,500 shows up there, and they're all pretty much rambling. It's like stream of consciousness, telling stories.
Uh-huh.
It's dreamy dreamland. So it's we did very good, sticking to the motif that we have, and so of all the stuff we did, which is the most? We'll leave it with this last story. The taking the battery powered Sawzall to Madonna's loft, going to New Mexico. Was it New Mexico where we went and saved Joni?
Tucson,
Arizona, or the Mexican restaurant in the West. The lower West. What neighborhood would that be? It's not the West Village per se, but it's.
Yeah, I think it's West Village. Tortilla Flat.
Yeah, Tortilla Flats, and it was near. What was the hotel right there that like the Velvet Underground hung out at? Everybody, the Chelsea. It was kind of near there, right?
No, I wouldn't really put it there. No, it was really below the meat market.
Yes.
Chelsea, the Chelsea's up on 23rd Street.
Yeah. So
this was like the meat packing district.
Yeah. So that's 16th Street, because that's where Bob Goddard had his building for the Joshua Light Show and the Pig Lights. The guys who did the lights over at the Fillmore East. I mean, that's when I really found the Lower East Side, was 1966, the Fillmore East. I was walking by with my little bag of tools, and someone blew the Grateful Dead was going to be there with a wall of sound, and someone plugged all of those speakers into an outlet and blew the speakers out into the street. It was quite a mess. And so we
all make mistakes.
We all make mistakes.
Do that one again.
Yes. Well, that's how I got the job. The guy looked at me, he goes, "You're an electrician?" I said, "I'm an excellent electrician." He goes, "Can you fix this?" I said, "I sure can. Right here, right now. We'll take care of it."
Hey, I remember just as a parting shot there, that I still did keep up that responsibility to unconventional wiring.
Safe but inadequate. That's the legal term.
Yeah, and I usually tended those things, but I seem to recall once taking you up in the Bronx for a hookup.
Yes.
You really, that's an acquired
skill. Yes, it's a skill set, and I honed that in Soho because those buildings were like put up in the 1890s, and they had DC and no AC, very little AC, and because all the machines in those factories they kept until the 1960s, because the DC was there, they didn't take it out because the subways ran on DC until years later.
DC was such a smart idea until that stupid guy Tesla came along with this alternating current.
Yes, which made it.
You need to have your powerhouse right next to your clients.
Right, every 6 miles. So yes.
Pretty good.
So I made a lot of rectifiers and would give people AC electricity. So that's where I honed my skill, and also my skill of wiring things that made it look like it was still from 1920.
Yeah, that is a real skill set.
Yes. Did I ever take you to my Batman shop?
Yes.
Down on Duane Street and yeah. And Jody and the rest of the gang. Yes, yes, we were definitely. That was and he still has that.
Oh, really?
Yes. Did you ever? I might have not had it, but I had another one of those on 21st Street. Do you remember the tennis bubble on 21st and 6th Avenue?
Not really.
That's a whole.
I didn't get out much then. It was like either the Bronx
Right.
Or the Lower East Side.
Right. That was, and that was the 70s too. That was the 70s.
So now I'm happy. I'm in Brooklyn.
Right.
Brooklyn is great.
And David went back to where I had been. I had been in Williamsburg from 1973 until 80, and it was like a war zone. So all of South 10th and South 11th has been burnt down. They rebuilt it like as condos, or what happened to all of that?
Yeah, development's really proceeding apace.
Yeah, it was nice having nothing there.
It's a taste.
Right, it's a taste.
I think I used to say that in the Lower East Side that at the time that we were there, it was the most extremely out of like the whole control of like the whole civilization. Where it's
like you said, anarchistic, but we were
in the center of it,
right,
geographically,
right,
but functionally, like being on the outside,
right,
like you were far away, even though you were right in the middle of it.
Right.
It was a very interesting situation. And another word that's useful is it was liminal.
Yeah.
Really, it was neither here nor there.
Right.
Which is makes me think of Rick von Valkenburg.
Yeah.
The neither nor.
Right. And I was also thinking about time travel. When I would take the Avenue B bus, it was like time travel because it would go through that unbelievable neighborhood and then up into almost cross Houston, then up Houston, and then like end up down in Wall Street. It's like,
yeah, remarkable.
Yes, it was like.
All right, Al, let's wrap it up here.
Okay, we're wrapping it up, and thank you, Dee, and we'll do it again because we really just scratched the surface.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what worked and what.
It all worked. No,
think about it. And,
I'm looking at there's a thing on this thing that's a chat. The audience makes their comments. They're all very enthralled and love the story. So we did a good job.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yes.
You didn't pay them to do that.
Yeah, I didn't pay them to do that.
Because that really is the easiest way to have it.
I know, to get it. Yes. That's most of it.
Okay.
Okay, champ. Later.
Force be with you.
Yes. Ditto.
And thank you for everything that you taught me.
Yeah. Well, I hope I'm still doing that because I'm still learning from you.
Okie dokie.
Ciao, baby.
Bye.
Say hi to your sweetie.
Okay.
Well, that's David, one of my adepts, and Alchemical Theater. Yep, that was part of our crew, and we had a lot of crews. We had because between David and I, we had this amazing cross of cultural and like I said, we were extremely similar, and really, at other ends of the universe. And it came together doing this housing authority. And our little chunk was just a little chunk. We had, like you said, 50 apartments. But all told, there were 500 that the movement did, right? And that was what was, photojournalism. Yep. So that was it. What are you guys? What did you get from? Wanted to say hi. Lana said hi. Hello. Alchemical Theater. Friends in all places. Exactly. Be friends with the police. I've always been friends with the police. Right. I'm always there to serve. Catch a lot more flies with honey. Yet. And it's so, I've been in so many different organizational structures, and it's so amazing how we can't talk to the police. We can't. When I did help do Occupy, the one in New York City in Decatur Park, it started out as chaos. I mean, it started out, the police basically, it was only 10 people, meeting and sitting on a park bench, right? And they were right across, from J.P. Morgan and Lehman Brothers and Eddie Merrill, Ricky Lynch, who I went to high school with, and where the footprint of Ducati Park was the Brooks Brothers store, from the 1890s, and they moved into the Merrill Lynch building when they built it, and got a tax break, and so they gave them the property to make a park. Very nice little, pocket park, as you would call it. And let's see. Oh, we're talking for an hour. Let's see how dinner. I left it on the low bubble. Let's see if it's edible. Let's see. Oh, smells good. Let me close the door so my room stays warm. Still pretty cold, man. It was like in the 20s here today during the day. So I'm hoping this will be the last of the cold. Hope we get into the 50s. Oh, let's see. Oh, there's that. So that's vegetables, refried beans that I made, and cheese raviolis with cheese on top. And this is let's see, it's the veggies, how the veggies are. Perfection. The key to cooking is don't burn the food. So, and clean up right after you. So, I was Dave, and we had, we came from, like I said, we had similar bents. I mean, we were two different paths. We did this for about 10 years. We were right here, and then we kind of went that way. And actually, I studied psychology a lot. I read it anyway, but I was more the engineer, electrical guy, and the artist. And photographer. Those were my three bents. And David was, like he said, he wanted to be a policeman. He wanted to, and so what's interesting is that 10 years after, well, not 10 years, but let's see, I left New York City in 88. I left 13th Street 2 years before that, maybe 1 year before that. And I had another place I was living in because I had so many little niches around New York City because I worked for so many different real estate guys. They would give me a niche. So I had a lot of places. So no one could ever find wherever I was. And when I showed David all those niches, he kind of got into that way of doing things too. So he didn't quite have my real estate connects. But anyway, he did in his own way. And like I said, we were pretty opposite, but we were so similar. It was pretty amazing. And that 6 years that we were, doing stuff together was pretty amazing. And we did all these amazing things together, and still we had separate things going on, right? So it was quite interesting. And our salon, and it was a salon more than a potluck dinner, but people brought food, So, but it was in a abandoned, burned out building. The crackheads were on the curb, and we had people from all over, high placed, super duper artists, politicians, like I said, lawyers, judges, you name it. They were there because it was an experience. They had, lots of fun. And we did lots of shows that were like that too. Pretty much all the events I did in those years were, just a continuation of the salon motif. And, but, when I went to Cornell in 88 and I, got onto doing demographics and trends, and then I went to, Chapel Hill and Duke again, because I was there in the 69, 70, and then I showed back up in 90, one, and Asheville. And Asheville, Duke, Chapel Hill, and Greensboro were my things I was doing. And I started to lecture at ETSU in Tennessee and Johnson City. And that's kind of when, especially when I was in Asheville, I kind of, things happened in Asheville that were paranormal in nature and also satanic. And there was a lot of hinky stuff in Asheville in the down low. And that's why I learned about ethnography, things hidden in plain sight. And that's when I bumped into the BBI, Bureau of Behavioral Investigation. And they were a private entity, corporation. They had nothing. I mean, people like the FBI, lots of different, law enforcement folk would hire us to look at things. And that's what we did. Our focus was on what was the behavioral dynamic of whatever was going on, what caused this event to occur, what kind of, person should you be looking for, that kind of stuff. And we were a little more woo-woo, but we were very scientific about our woo-woo. And so it's interesting that David started out early on in this late or mid 70s to go in that direction, and I ended up in the 90s doing that. So it was interesting. So then that was Dave, and even though we had, again, everything about us was similar, but there was a dynamic that could have been, both David and I are people who can push people's buttons. And when we did that as a tag team, it was like unstoppable. And so it was interesting. So we never pushed each other's buttons, a couple of times, but those couple of times we cut each other slack on it because we were doing all this other great stuff and we had so much fun, the stuff we did. And that's one thing I wanted to talk to him about. He wanted to go, though. He probably had to go to dinner. And that was it. So that was the story. So that was about an hour and 17 minutes. And there's two of you there. I would cook a lot more often if someone else would just do all the cleaning up. Well, see, if I've cooked for, lots of people, had restaurants. When you cook in a restaurant and you were the cook and bottle washer at the same time, you basically clean up as you make the mess. So it's not a gigantic mess, I don't fill the sink with a ton of things and just leave it there. I kind of always keep cleaning. I clean the place, and John, he got so upset the other day because this stove here, right, the dark one, the white one is the one that George and Inga got out of the garbage, and the black one is the one I got out of the garbage. Somebody threw it out on the road, down Wise. I had a truck then. I just threw it on the truck, brought it up here, plugged it in, it worked. Hey, look at that. And it was really kept nice, right? And I would clean it up, and in the years that I haven't been here, John's never cleaned it once, and it was totally full of grease. So I just kind of cleaned the top and the elements. I kind of burned them off, and I didn't, clean up the grease. A little bit, but the other day I was making something, and as I moved the pot, the grease from the pot hit the element, which was hot and red hot, and I poof, the grease that was there kind of poof, right? And you do not throw water on a grease fire, right? And first you try and smother it. So I put a lid on it, but there was a space underneath the whole thing, so it was getting oxygen, right? So the element didn't burn anymore, but the underneath where the grease was burning. So I was thinking about how to do it. So I got a cup of water and I dropped a little of it, see how that did. And so put it up. He got a big glass of water and threw it on there. And luckily, the majority of the grease wasn't liquefied. It was just kind of like wax, right? So we put it out. But if it had been liquefied, the whole stove would have gone woof. And he started screaming after me, "Why did you throw the water on that?" And he totally went way up the hook. And, I said, "Well, John, you don't put water on a grease fire." He goes, "I know. My grandfather was a fireman. I know all about fire." Really? Genetically, you know all about fire. I was a fireman, So anyway, my cooking skills is, I ran these little restaurants. They were like, in the abandoned buildings. There was no place to eat. We had to cook our own food. We had to start our own bank. These are all amazing things. Like the gardening that we started on 6th Street up to, 16th Street, all the different buildings we had gardens in the back because there's no place to buy food. And, we didn't want to go, 8, 10, 60 blocks, there was no real good, Dina DeLuca's was in Soho, 30 blocks away. And that was super expensive. Pretty good, but super expensive. Now you could go, and that's what I did. I would go there was the egg and cheese and butter district. There was the meat district. There was a vegetable district. There was a fish district. And I would just go there with a supermarket cart that, I found and would go through the dumpster. And they would throw whole wheels of cheese that had, mold on it. When you cut the mold off, the cheese, like that much of cheese was, 20 pounds of cheese was still really good. Really good cheese. Same with the meat and the Munster. You'd find some really amazing beef just thrown out in a dumpster because it wasn't economically feasible to trim it all the way down to what was good. But I could do that. And I had, when we started the Ear Inn, that's, we had, I called it the Dumpster Dive Diner, And plus the back of the building was blown out. In the wintertime, it would snow into the restaurant. And I had these really intense electric heaters, like the kind that John has upstairs. So anyway, that was a nice little blast in the past. And I hope you like my bringing. Hey, Anthony. Yo, dude, awake. Yep, that's me. You'll have to go back and watch the rest of this. Have you guys been watching the last 6 or so? I've been talking about addiction, right? And it was interesting. One of the so a lot of people in the Lower East Side and the Bowery and the South Bronx and all of that, those people were pretty. Crack was hitting it hard when we were doing this, and also with AIDS. So I saw a lot of people die. Gunshot wounds, ODs, yes, and in one of the buildings I went in, I got off of work early. Normally I would come home about 5 or 6, but I was coming in around 2, right? And I was going to go do something up my thing. And as soon as I walked in, the hallway just had smoke in it. And so I just went up, I'm a fireman. I just went upstairs, and the door that was hot, I go, okay. I kicked the door in, and these morons, they were the crackheads. They had a kerosene heater, which was totally against. We had one, but really we had a wood stove, much safer than a kerosene heater, because they left it on, and they knew that it was verboten in this building. So what did they do? They slid it under a table, right? And in the corner, they had milk containers with kerosene in it, right? And slowly the kerosene was dissolving the plastic of the milk containers because they weren't designed to carry kerosene. They were designed to carry milk. And so I kicked the door in, and the table is on fire, right? And one of the kerosene jugs had melted between the kerosene melting and the heat of the fire, because it was quite close, right? Like 5, 6 feet away. And it, it hadn't burst open, but it was drizzling kerosene towards the fire. fire hits that, it shoots to that. That one blows up, shoots the other. They had 15 of these 15 gallons of kerosene in milk containers, and that would have. And there were people upstairs. My place was above them, but there were two other apartments that had children in them. So all I did was, they had a big chair. I threw it through the window. I grabbed a towel, wrapped it on the leg of the burning table, and threw that out the window, and then took all their clothes, put water on it, and put it over the kerosene containers, and then threw another chair out the back window and threw the kerosene out into the back lot, where if it caught fire, wouldn't burn anything except the kerosene. And it didn't. It just kind of went out. It was wintertime. It was snow out there. Just threw it out there. And, I did good. I saved 10 people's lives in the building, and they got so upset. They called me a Stalinist. How dare you kick the door into our apartment? I said, our rule is that there shouldn't be a lock on the door. The rule is you're not supposed to, it's against the law to have a kerosene heater in New York City. It's super against the law to have 15 gallons of kerosene in milk containers, right? And the people upstairs were very appreciative, but other people you're taking away their free rights. You can't tell them what to do. I said, this is a collective. We have to collectively protect each other. So they got very upset that I smashed their windows, and they want to smash my windows. And David said, over my dead body, So we had to deal with people like that. And like I said, pretty much all the kids that came out of this, and David too, when we were why those kids in Ireland turned out the way they did was David, I, and Sarah and Pat were really paid. We spent a week with his family, and they were like, they had a bucket to shit in, right? They were very rural. And Mick was a poet, that's why we went there. He was a Druid poet, and he was trying to live as Druidish as he could. And his wife they were both artists, and their kids were artists. They were works of art. They had 4 kids, and they were just amazing. They all turned, at least the 3 girls turned out pretty freaking amazing, right? And, college professor, anthropology, right? And, photojournalist. And the other one, I think, was a movie maker. So, a cinematographer. And that was Ireland in those days. You could do, if you wanted to, the government pretty much took care of its people. That was their, they weren't thinking about great investments, highways. They weren't thinking about having an army or anything, right? So they had a Garda, Watch your addiction videos. Yeah, you should go watch them. The last 4 or 5. I did 2 or 3 yesterday, and basically it's John is a pussycat with me, except if he drinks coffee, and then he's a demon, and then he apologizes. I mean, he was off the hook, and that's an addictive person. That's an addict, and his addiction is caffeine. Because he brought it down and said, hide it, right? So I did. I didn't dig a hole out in the woods and hide it. I put it, you'd have to, there's all these things around, if you open every one, so in one of these things, I put it, I put it in the easiest place for me to put it and still be hidden. And, after he did that, went upstairs, I, looked and the coffee was gone. I was like, and then this morning I said, so you were drinking coffee? Oh, no. I drank this kombucha and it said it had, I didn't read the label and it said it had, caffeine, right? Not, how much caffeine does kombucha have in it? And, and then I opened the door of where I hid it. I said, but it's gone. He goes, oh, no. I took it upstairs and then I brought it back down for you to hide and you put it someplace else. Sorry, not really. So I just let it drop it, But I, shows, there are about 3 or 4 about addiction. And basically, after going through that, and it's not like something new, it's like happens whenever he drinks, coffee, because he can't just drink one cup of coffee. I drink one cup of coffee in the morning. That's about it. And I take just a couple sips. I have a couple more sips at 10 and a couple more sips at noon. I don't drink cup after cup after cup after cup. And I don't, the coffee I have these tea bag kind of coffee bags, and I just put water in it, and so the coffee gets diluted more and more as I drink it. And one cup is one, right, one day or that morning, and then the next day it's the same tea bag, and the next until it's no longer even tastes like coffee. Okay, I'll get another tea bag. So it's if you have to have and you can't stop having, that's addiction. And the problem with our planet at this moment is that we are addicted to unsustainable consumption, and it's just getting worse. We're not, when I went to, Cooper Union in 69, 68, 68, 69, I basically, and we knew this, back when I was in, that public school in 6th grade, when I took biology, our teacher was big on, the environment. That was part of it wasn't just the human body, but it was all of biology. And, species were already being extinct at a alarming rate. And the, all of the coral reefs were starting to have effect. And the drilling of oil in the Gulf of Mexico was having effect, a measurable scientific effect. That was, let's see, I started high school in 64, 65. So I graduated 8th grade in 63, 64. So 66 was 65, 66 is when I was in 6th grade. So no, might have been earlier than that, because I would have been 16. So how old are you when you're in 6th grade? Like 11, 12, something like that. So John, dinner's ready. Okay. I'm just finishing up the show. I had a nice conversation with an old friend.
How's it going?
Going great.
I don't want to be on camera.
Okay, so I'll say good night. Good night. Or I'll just put the camera this way and keep talking. Telling the story. So here, come and get the plate. You don't even have to eat here. You can.
I'll eat here. I just don't want to be filmed while I'm eating.
Okay, not a problem.
I could be in the video a little. I don't care.
All right. Okay.
Cool.
Yes, this is a good one.
That looks good. That looks like good food.
Yep.
Oh, it looks good.
Mm-hmm.
The vegetables look good.
Yep.
Looks good. I looked at some of the video. I looked at one video we filmed
Mm-hmm.
since you've been here this time,
Mm-hmm.
and I looked like really awful. Thanks.
There you go. Here you go.
All right. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to diet and fast while drinking caffeine, and then you'd cook these meals that smelled really good, and I couldn't help but to come down and eat them.
Well,
While I was drinking tons of caffeine.
these meals are not going to.
It was two conflicting things. It somehow my face looked awful.
Yes. This food is vegetables. You know, this is not fattening food. This is good for you. So,
Yeah. I haven't had corn in forever.
there it is.
This is pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty much every meal I make it, John, is good. And
This is
good for
country
you.
cooking.
And good for you.
Country cooking corn.
Yep.
Oh crap! I hope it wasn't bad.
And refried beans that I made instead of getting it out of a can. Oh, look at that meal. Yummy. So anyway, so candidates, get a hold of everyone. Get a hold of me at dudewake42 at gmail. Dudewake42 at gmail. Catch you later. I'm going to do one later tonight. Right now it's 5 o'clock, so I'm around 7:30. Okay? Okay.
This food's really good.
Yes, I know.
It tastes good so far.